cái lưng tôi. Most people do not realize that some banks literally make money by giving loans without having money on deposit. The system is called fractional reserve banking. And is used in most economies. It sounds as though it is said because it says that banks have to keep a fraction of their deposits with the reserve bank. Keep a fraction of their deposits with the reserve bank. fractional. Most people do not realize that some banks literally make money by giving loans without having money on deposit. The system is called fractional reserve banking and is used in most economies. It sounds as though it is said because it says that banks have to keep a fraction of their deposits with the reserve bank. Your subject outlines are a good place to go to find information about which textbooks to buy. You will usually use the given one of these. You will usually be given one of these for each subject in the first lecture. But if you are missing one or need one earlier, then you should contact the subject coordinator. But if you are missing one or need one earlier, then you need to. Your subject outlines are a good place to go to find information about which textbooks to buy. You will usually be given one of these for each subject in the first lecture. But if you are missing one or need to one earlier, then you should contact the subject coordinator. The book is no ordinary book and should not be read through from beginning to end. It contains many different adventures, and the path you take will be determined by the choices you make along the way. The success or failure of your mission hinges on decisions you make, so think carefully before choosing. The success or failure of your mission hinges on decisions you make, so think carefully before choosing. Adventures. This book is no ordinary book and should not be read through from beginning to end. It contains many different adventures, and the path you take will be determined by the choices you make along the way. The success or failure of your mission hinges on decisions you make, so think carefully before choosing. Two sisters were at a dinner party when the conversation turned to upbringing. The elder sister started to say that her parents have been very strict and that she had been rather frightened of them. Her sister, younger by 2 years, interrupted in amazement. What are you talking about? Our parents are lenient. Two sisters were at a dinner party where the conversation turned to upbringing. The elder sister started to say that her parents had been very strict and that she had been rather frightened of them. Her sister, younger by 2 years, interrupted in amazement. What you are talking about? She said. Our parents were very lenient. Nature offers no greater splendor than the starry sky on a clear dark night, silent and jeweled with the constellations of ancient myth and legend. The night sky has inspired wonder and throughout the ages, a wonder that leads to our imaginations far from the confines of earth and the pace of the present day and out onto the distant reaches of space and cosmic time itself. Nature offers no greater splendor than the starry sky on the clear dark night, silent and jeweled with the constellations of ancient myth and legend. The night sky has inspired wonder throughout the ages, a wonder that leads our imaginations far from the confines of earth and the pace of the present day and out into the distant reaches of space and cosmic time itself. The advantage of the great European and American orchestra is that they were able to establish their iconic status in an age where identity could become entrenched. There was less competition and it was easier to create a brand. Not only did they have the best hosts, they attract the best musicians who tended to stay put, who tended to stay who tended to stay put. The advantage of the great European and American orchestra is that they were able to establish their iconic status in an age where identity could become entrenched. There was less competition and it was easier to create a brand. Not only did they have the best hosts, they attracted the best musicians who tended to stay put. Despite a number of events in recent years devoted to language diversity, language endangerment, and multilingualism, such as the International Year of Languages, public awareness of the issue is still remarkably limited. Only 1 of 4 of the population know that half of the languages of the world are so seriously endangered that they are unlikely to survive the present industry. Remarkably, half the languages. Despite a number of events in recent years devoted to language diversity, language endangerment, and multilingualism, such as the International Year of Languages, public awareness of the issue is still remarkably limited. Only 1 in 4 of the population know that half the languages of the world are so seriously endangered that they are unlikely to survive the present century.
39.5% of California residents do not speak English in the home.
39.5% of Californian residents do not speak English at home.
The tutorial rooms are located along the left-hand side.
The tutorial location room is located on the left-hand side.
Let's see if the technology is going to cooperate for this presentation.
Let's see the technology go on cooperation for the presentation.
She doesn't care about anything but what is honest and true.
She doesn't care about anything but what is honest and true.
Children are not allowed in tutorial rooms at any time.
Children are not allowed in a tutorial room at any time.
In Europe, the political pressure is similar regarding globalization.
In Europe, the political era is similar regarding globalization.
Politicians make much better decisions when they listen to public opinion.
Our something listen to much better decision when listen to the public opinions.
We have very little actual documentation of it.
We have very little actual documentations of it.
We've been doing research in that area for probably over 25 years.
We can probably doing the research in this area for probably 25 years.
The media have had a great influence on people's beliefs and attitudes.
The media has great influence on the people's beliefs and attitudes.
The final exam will test material from all chapters covered in class this term.
The final exam will cover all chapters covered in class this term. Barriers to visiting museum or art galleries. Barriers to visiting museum or art galleries. Lack of time, 55%. Lack of information about event, 6%. Lack of percent reason, lack of either not available locally, transport problem, cost of entry. The bar chart provides information about the barriers to visiting museums or art galleries, which highlighting various elements such as the reason and percent. According to the bar chart, we can see that lack of time has the maximum number, that is around 55%. However, lack of information about event has the lowest number, that is around 6%. It is interesting to say that the information of transport problems and the cost of entry has increased significantly in recent years. In conclusion, the bar chart is about the barriers to visiting museums or art galleries. Where international companies have their European headquarters. Number of European headquarters and the country, UK, or 2020. Denmark, or Denmark 10. The bar chart provides information about where international companies have their European headquarters, which highlighting various elements such as the country, Germany, Switzerland, France, and Ireland. According to the bar chart, we can see that UK has the maximum number, that is around 220. However, Denmark has the lowest number, that is around 10. It is interesting to say that the information of France and Netherlands has increased significantly in recent years. In conclusion, we can see that the bar chart is about the international companies have their European headquarters. Income by age and gender in the UK. Income by age and gender in the UK. Females, males, male, females. 45, 49, 30,000. Lowest under 20, 10,000. The lie chart provides information about the income by age and gender in the UK, which highlighting various elements such as the both female, males, and the medium income pre-tax. It is interesting to say that the lie chart has the maximum number, that is around under 20, which is 10,000. However, 45 to 49 years old has the maximum number, that is around 13,000. It is interesting to say that the lie chart about females and males has increased significantly in recent years. In conclusion, we can see that the lie chart is about the income by age and gender in the UK. Manufacturer, retailers, consumers, recyclers, manufacturers, recyclers. Interaction, association, connection, process. The process provides information about the recycling, which highlighting various elements such as manufacturers, retailers, and consumers. In the first stage of the process, we can see the key details about manufacturers and retailers. However, the second stage focuses on the interaction between the retailers and consumers. On the other hand, the third stage provides connection between the recyclers and consumers. The second stage provides the details about recyclers and manufacturers. In conclusion, the process is very interesting and informative. Economic benefits of migration.
Now, economists calculate, and it's a back-of-the-envelope calculation, that removing all immigration controls would double the size of the world economy. And even a small relaxation of immigration controls would lead to disproportionately big gains. Now, from an ethical point of view, it's hard to argue against a policy that would do so much to help people who are much poorer than ourselves. The famous RAND study reckons that the typical immigrant who arrives in the US ends up $20,000 a year better off. And it's not just the migrants themselves who gain, it's the countries that they come from. Already, the migrants working from poor countries, working in rich countries, send home around $200 billion a year through formal channels, and perhaps twice that through informal channels. And that compares to the mere $100 billion that Western governments give in aid. And those remittances, they're not wasted on weapons, they're not siphoned off into Swiss bank accounts. They go straight into the pockets of local people. They pay for food, they pay for clean medicine, clean water, they pay for medicines. They help keep kids in school. They help start up new businesses.
The lecture was about the ethical point of view, which highlighting various elements such as the government aid and the send home formal. Firstly, he stated that all of innovation will double a side economy. Secondly, he highlighted that the country they were from. Thirdly, he highlighted that we send over $10 billion a year. Finally, he stated that the local pay for the food, medication, and also have to keep the kids in the school to their businesses. In conclusion, the lecture is about the economic benefits of migration.
What is formed when snow melts?
Ice.
Does mathematics or linguistics cover the study of the relationships between numbers?
Mathematics.
What's the word for the fourth basic arithmetical operation? Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and
Division.
How many times does an isolated incident occur?
2 times.
What type of coastal building warns sailors of dangerous coasts?
Dangerous coast.
How often is a quarterly journal published?
Every four. someone to do something. Help teacher to learn.
So let's just talk a little bit about a telescope. Our eye is the telescope we all are used to. It's a little tiny 5mm telescope, and it serves us very well. But if we make telescopes bigger, we get a couple good things. We have larger telescopes, and they collect a lot more light, so we can see things that are fainter. But it turns out they greatly improve detail, and that's because of the nature that light is a wave, and wave effects, or what we call quantum mechanical effects, mean that when you use a little telescope to look at waves, it becomes blurry through what we call diffraction. And so larger telescopes are extremely useful to improve detail. The other thing that telescopes allow us to do is to put modern digital detectors behind them. Our eye is about the same sensitivity as a photographic plate. A photographic plate can be sat there and it can look at the sky for an hour, so it can see fainter. But modern digital detectors are almost 100 times more efficient than our eyes at collecting light. And so you can improve things by a factor of 100. That's like building a telescope 10 times bigger. And so that improvement has been one of the things that's allowed astronomy to do so much in the optical regime in the last 30 years.
spring is sprung. I guess the mozzies will not be far behind. Why do they bite us?
Well, they basically, it's only the female mosquitoes that bite, and the female needs that hit of protein to develop her eggs. So male mosquitoes and female mosquitoes can survive on plant juices and nectars and things like that. But when it comes time to lay some eggs, the female really needs that hit of protein.
There is an allegation that they like some humans better than others. Do you go along with that?
Yeah, look, there's 1,000 theories as to why one person might be more attractive than another's. But at the end of the day, it's the mosquitoes are attracted to carbon dioxide and heat, some visual cues, and also the odours associated with our skin. And that's what really sort of makes them hone in on us.
Visual clues?
Yeah, sometimes colour can attract mosquitoes, but really the primary one is the carbon dioxide, and all the hot air we breathe out sure attracts the mosquitoes.
So that we've all got carbon dioxide. So on that theory, every human is as attractive as every other.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, one of the things that really confuses the issue is that individuals react differently to the mosquito bites as well. So that when the mosquito feeds and injects the saliva, we have an allergic reaction. And like all allergies, people react differently. So, for instance, you and I could be bitten by a couple of mosquitoes here in the studio, and I might not have any reaction at all, but you might come up in some big red lumps, and it seems as though you're being more attracted by mosquitoes.
Yeah, bitten more than you are.
So in a very important sense, memory is the cognitive function that stores knowledge that we've acquired through learning and perception. But also, memory is important because memory frees our behavior from control by the present stimulus environment. If you didn't have memory, all you'd be able to do is to react to whatever's currently in the environment now, whatever it is that you're experiencing. But memory allows us to respond to past events as well as events in the current stimulus environment. And memory also gives us the means to reflect on our experiences so that we plan for future encounters.
For 4 centuries after the Viking decline, the people of the Shetland Islands off the north coast of Scotland continued to sell their goods through the North European Hanseatic League. The Hanse merchants bought shiploads of salted fish, and in return, the islanders got cash, grain, cloth, and other goods. This lasted until the Act of Union between Scotland and England in 1707. This act prohibited the Hanse merchants from trading with Scotland. Consequently, Shetland went into an economic depression. The independent farmers of Shetland had to sell their land and were then obligated to pay rent, eventually becoming serfs.
Trading. Obligated trading, salted, decline, depression.
Another arm of the United States government was the FSA, the Farm Security Administration. And they had a peculiar task, because in addition to the Depression, which had obviously hit farmers quite hard, because suddenly the material that they were producing wasn't really as valuable, yet their costs for producing it were exactly the same. They were hit not only by that, but also by another problem, which was the Dust Bowl. And the Dust Bowl was this terrible drought that hit the American West and Southwest especially, and caused terrible economic problems for those farmers.
Mắc gì không có được.
At Southampton Institute, we are making a conscious effort to link the various activities and objectives of our institutional learning and teaching strategy. This has been reinforced by joint meetings between our teaching and learning and research and scholarship committees, and by attempts to link our strategies for research and teaching. I should say that even at a still relatively new place like the Institute, it has proved difficult to achieve this. At the joint meeting, people had almost to be introduced to one another, and we are still very much feeling our way. Matters are not, of course, helped by the current external regimes for funding or accountability. These drive the two activities apart and offer few rewards to institutions such as mine, which are conscientiously trying to develop the link not only between teaching and research, but between these and third stream activities as well.
People tend to think of the colonization of the Americas by white Europeans as the biggest wave of migration in history, but it's actually dwarfed by what's happening nowadays. Every year, over 10 million people move from the Chinese countryside to Chinese cities. That's 300 million people in the past 30 years. Across the world, people are moving from rural areas to urban areas. This year, for the first time ever, half of humanity lives in the city. Migration is inevitable. It's both a consequence of development and a driver of it. And compared with the vast movement of people within national borders, the numbers crossing them seem relatively few. In fact, the United Nations counts a mere 200 million international migrants worldwide. That's less than 3% of the global population.
Same with practices which are familiar, but which have a morally neutral appearance. So, we know that certain things are happening, we just don't know the details of them well enough to know that the practice in it is not a neutral practice, but has certain morally relevant properties. For example, we're all familiar with search engines, and we know that they employ certain algorithms, and we just assume that these algorithms in a neutral way bring us the sites with the most hits. They will bring us the top 10 or top 20 of relevant sites when we enter the keywords.
We don't really have a free trade regime. Free trade would mean that you took away all barriers to trade, all impediments to a level playing field. We don't have a level playing field. For instance, the United States and the EU subsidize agriculture. That means that producers in these countries get money for producing. They don't just rely on the market. Free trade would be just rely on the market. Almost half their income comes from government subsidies. Somebody might say they actually spend more money farming Washington than they farming the land. So the problem is that developing countries, too poor to give subsidies, have to compete with this highly subsidized American and European agriculture. So even if they were just as efficient, even if they were twice as efficient, they would have a
Does that mean that you could try to figure out the connection between, or the relationship between behavior and these technological settings in such a way that you could try to create a technological setting that allowed just those types of behavior that were good? I'm intending this to be a very simple question, perhaps too simple, but that's an open question. Can you construct a technological setup so that it implies a certain type of behavior?
The extra lecture will take place on a Wednesday, but I'm not sure exactly when it's going to be or where. But I will let you know, don't worry. So if you can all just keep an eye on your emails, this is how we'll let you know of any changes to the course. Right, so beginning with the outline, we're going to be looking at different types of historical research, the strengths and drawbacks of each. Yes, back row?
Anyone who's ever paid attention to the warnings of climate change is aware that sea level rise is one of the consequences. And even though science is improving our insight into ocean and ice dynamics and the scientific measurement of the rate of sea level rise, billions of dollars worth of coastal development is still being constructed under the assumption that the stable sea levels of the past several millennia will continue. That's why a group of international scientists have written a new book called Understanding Sea Level Rise and Variability, a comprehensive overview of current knowledge on the science of sea level rise.
Most of the students had not considered this issue before. Money and how it is paid can affect motivation to work.
When workers ask for higher wages, companies often raise prices.
Prices. When workers ask for higher wages. Ask, raised. Raised. Prices, raised.
Teaching assistants will receive a monthly stipend for housing.
Teaching assistant will receive a monthly stipend. Assistant. Nhớ còn khỏe luôn.